right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the MHP Show podcast. I'm your host, Derek Vickers. You know that we talk about anything and everything that has to do with mobile home parks, operations, and just about this business in general and crazy things that happen, for sure. And before we get started here, I got a very special guest with us today, but I want you guys to go check out, it's free.parkinvestingpro.com, and you'll get my free ebook. Okay. And basically what's in that ebook is how I structured all of my deals in the last 3 years and how I did that, how I got into my first deal with no money. All right. And I'm going to show you exactly how I did that in that ebook. And also a little secret here. If you scroll down after it's kind of a little glitch, but I was like, whatever, just keep it. So if you scroll down, you can actually get access to the first masterclass that I did for free. So check that out at free.parkinvestingpro.com. All right. So now I've got a very special guest with us today. And if you don't know him and you're in this business, I don't know where you've been, but I've got Mr. Sam Hales with me today, the CEO of the Saratoga Group. Sam, what's up, dude?
Hey, I'm Derek. I'm on your website trying to check this out, man. I'm sure I could learn a lot from that website. So I'm going to check that out later. Hey, glad to be here. Glad to be talking to you.
Yeah, cool, man. I don't know, Sam. I mean, I could probably learn a thing or two from you, but I appreciate that. So I want to, kind of tell us. And I always like to start this show, and I ask people about their first entrepreneurial journey, because a lot of times it's vastly different than what we're doing now. So tell me about that.
Yeah, for me, I never liked having a boss. I mean, if we just rewind things and I think about I started working when I was 14 years old. I was shoveling manure on a hog farm in Iowa. I definitely didn't like that. And I didn't think it could get worse, but I never, I wasn't a great employee. I don't think. I mean, I wasn't a bad employee, but I just, but I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship. Like nobody I knew did it. My dad was a surgeon. I mean, did well for himself, but it was, I didn't have anybody that I knew closely or had put it together. Like, hey, that person is doing their own thing, and that's what I want to do. So it took me a while to kind of figure out. And so I started out anyway, Derek. I started out just on the side. I had a tech job. I was working in tech in San Francisco Bay Area. And then I started kind of flipping houses a little bit on the side. And I just loved it. I just loved, being the master of my own destiny, as they say. And so at least it took me a while to get there, but knew that I liked real estate, and I liked, doing my own thing, and I wanted to figure out how to make that come together. It took years to get there, and a lot of kind of stumbling along the way.
Yeah, so. For sure. And I think we've all stumbled to a degree, and I love the humble beginnings, because when I was in college, I worked during the summers with my grandfather, had a little general contracting business. So I did all the bitch work, all of it, right?
Yeah.
And so you learn a lot, but I'd be curious to know, what did that teach you when you were doing that manual labor type work? Because I've done it, and I think everyone should have to do it to a certain degree.
We could go down that rabbit hole for a while, because I couldn't agree more. I just that experience. And like I said, I mean, it was easily 12 hours a day. I was shoveling hog manure. It was my first job. I take that back. That was my second job. My first job was the summer before, and I was driving a hay chopper, working on a farm. I mean, most of my experience working growing up was somewhat manual labor. It's a very manual labor, but it was all kind of around the farming industry. And that'd be natural, kind of growing up in Iowa. That's mostly what there is. And at the time, I don't know that I thought, hey, this is miserable, but I definitely recognized that didn't want to do this when I grew up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was just, hey man, if I wanted money, I had to figure out how to earn some money, and that's what I did. But I think the perspective there was, it gave me a chance to just reflect. I mean, when you're doing manual labor, like you've got nothing but your thoughts. And back then it wasn't like, you're listening to music or podcasts. I mean, it was just me and my thoughts shoveling manure. Right. And I don't know that I came up with anything real brilliant when I was 14, but I definitely, it was a chance for me to really congeal around, hey, what does my future look like, and what could it be? And definitely somewhere in there, and there's no defining moment, but somewhere in there it was like, yeah, I'm going to college. I'm gonna get a good job, right? I don't think, like I said, there was nobody in my life that would have influenced me to think, hey, I'm gonna run a business or own a business, but at least that I was going to get a good job and I wasn't going to shovel manure when I was in my 20s and that.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome, man. And, I never thought about that, because you're right. When I was doing that kind of work too, you're like, there wasn't podcasts. Like
No.
there maybe there was, but you were really there with your thoughts. And after you got in the groove of things, you sort of got in this little zone where you were actually kind of like feeling good doing it. And I was like, wait a second, I don't want to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's I love that. So let's talk about, so you were flipping houses. How in the heck, we were working a tech job in San Francisco. Like, how in the heck did you get into this world of trailer parks or mobile home parks or whatever you want to call them?
Yes. Well, even when I was doing single family homes, I was pretty focused on, well, one side of it was I was focused on cash flow. So we were buying kind of, entry level homes, pretty affordable homes. And that means different things in the San Francisco Bay Area than it does in a lot of places. But affordability, oh my gosh, like is that needed there more than anywhere? And so, that means that's the clientele we were focusing on. A lot of our clients were Hispanic, but also like that was where the best cash flow was. So I was focused on that as well. And so started doing that raised the fund in 2011 and was doing that in a bigger way, starting 2011, did it for about 5 years, started wrapping up those funds. And, it's like, man, that was an easy time to be investing. If you think about, right, if you didn't make money then, like you probably shouldn't be in the business. But it also, we made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot of things, and also learned that single family investing, when you start scaling it up, is not easy. Like you really, to create that platform, and there were groups starting to do it then, but it was a major undertaking and a major investment that needed to happen there. But it didn't naturally lend itself to being very scalable. And anyway, but I was also concerned about kind of market cycles. And in 2016, I felt like we were at the top of the market, which is funny to think about now. But anyway, I wanted to get into a sector of real estate that I felt would do well during a downturn, would provide good cash flow. And hey, we both know that's mobile home communities, but at the time it was a journey trying to figure it out. And I tried a number of different things and kind of dabbled here and there. Bought our first mobile home park in 2017. And 2 months into that, I'm like, this is it. Pause, halt, whatever, everything else. Like we're going all in on mobile home parks.
Wow. That's awesome. So you bought the first park. You bought the first park in 2017. So how many parks do you have now? How many pads do you have now?
Pad wise, we have about 6,600. And it's about 110 communities.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of movement there. 110 communities in, something in the span of 5 years. And I saw you guys just close. Did you guys just close another deal last week? I thought I saw you post on LinkedIn about that.
Yeah, well, and that's why I paused for a minute, because I was like, it was 105, and then so maybe that's 111. Okay. But anyway, yeah, we closed on a portfolio in Kansas City 2 weeks ago, and excited about that. I mean, it's hard we could talk about it, right? But it's a tough time right now, because it's like, unless you can find a seller that's willing to carry at 5%, like the deals that were there before, they don't make sense. Negative leverage, and like that doesn't make sense to me, right? So we're fortunate. I mean, that thing was that portfolio's cash flowing pretty well, about an 8.5 cap, and our leverage was at 7%. So not a huge spread there, but definitely some upside and positive leverage going in.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I'd say it's crazy, because I was given this analogy to someone who kind of doesn't understand, real estate. And I'm like, all right, so I'll put it to you like this. Like in 2021, if you looked at 20 deals, you could probably figure out how to make all of them work if you really wanted to. Right. And now you look at 20 and maybe, one works. Right.
Yeah.
And not for the sheer fact of fundamentals. Like the fundamentals of the business are there. They could be great properties, but it's just what you're talking about. You're like a 7% interest rate kills a lot of deals, and even 8% in some cases. Like, it just doesn't work. And you have a great deal there, right?
Yeah.
But the spread still isn't like, isn't that crazy?
No. Yeah, exactly. I'd rather have a 3 spread than 1.5. But yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming, and with that being said, that's what you guys have been seeing in the market, because that's what we've been seeing. Like my deal flow is insane right now. Like we're looking at stuff daily. I'm like, man, this is a lot of work for like not many things that can work. Are you guys seeing the same thing? I'm sure.
Well, no, we are. I mean, yeah, Derek, kind of the position we've taken, and I'm not saying that this is the right position or what, but basically we're not really pursuing acquisitions like 12 months ago, 24 months ago, 36 months ago. Our pipeline, meaning things we had in escrow, was typically around 10 parks.
Wow.
We typically would have 10 parks in escrow. We have one right now, and that's closing tomorrow. And it's small. It's part of a OZ fund that we have. And then we'll have 0. And so anyway, our approach is we're not spending that much time on it, because most of it doesn't make sense. And occasionally, like the other things that we purchased this year, there are markets we're already in. It's a seller we've known for a while. We've kind of been, nurturing that relationship, and it's a deal that we just makes sense to have. But there's not a lot of those, and we don't. Other than what we are about to buy, I don't know that there's anything on the horizon that we're going to close in the rest of the year, and that's okay. I mean, our attitude is we've got a lot that needs to be done just with our current portfolio. We've got a lot of park-owned homes that need to be renovated. We got lots of empty lots to fill, and we're just kind of leaning into that, and trying to accelerate that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in this business, especially, I don't know what kind of parks that you were actually buying, but we were buying, heavy value add stuff. And so we haven't, made that many acquisitions in the last year. But trust me, we've had plenty to do, right?
Oh, yeah.
With projects and selling park-owned homes, and bringing in homes on vacant lots and trying to figure that out, and dealing with code enforcement and all the fun stuff, right? There's plenty to do when you're buying these kind of value add parks. But I'd be curious to know, and I'm sure our listeners would be too. So kind of wrapping back, you said you bought that first park in 2017. So when did you get to 6,000? Was there one year that you blew it up, or kind of walk us through that a little bit?
You're saying to 6,000? I mean, because we're only 6,600 now, so 6,000 was really I think it was the acquisition that happened right before the end of 2022.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, in that vein, Derek, that's one thing that's hard about this business is that, if we were multifamily investors, we'd kind of crunch our numbers and we'd say, okay, I'm going after Nashville, Tennessee. And there's so many multifamily properties in Nashville, Tennessee, and you can build a sizable business buying apartment buildings in Nashville. I would love to own a mobile home park in Nashville. I don't own one now. I don't know that I ever will because that's kind of not how our business works, right? I mean, we could go look up in our database, I'm sure you have one too, and say, okay, well, there's, 15 parks, and it's probably more than that, or we'll pick a number, but there's a very defined and small number of mobile home communities in many major MSAs across the country. And so we have to be opportunistic. We kind of have to follow where the opportunities are. You need to vet that area and vet that geography. But if we were just only focused on a couple geographies, it'd be very hard to scale the business. And so we definitely have confined ourselves to kind of the Southeast Midwest. So, starting in Florida, up to Kentucky and Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, and then kind of down. And there's some of the states we haven't hit yet, but that's kind of our footprint. But it's still inefficient. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and these are not easy places to get to. I mean, here we picked Knoxville, Tennessee as our home because it was pretty centrally located, but it's still hard for me to get to most of my locations in terms of flights or drive. I mean, it's, can be a 5-hour drive. And it's like, well, how do you fly there? Not easily.
Yeah.
not unless you have a private plane. So anyway, so it's been, growth has been challenging, but we have district managers and we put a lot of autonomy and trust in them. And of course we have to verify that, and we do surprise visits and all that. But it's been a journey for sure. And it's really hard, I think, at the beginning because you don't have enough fees coming in to hire any really good help. And so, it was years before I could pull a salary, and so, and that's what's not. We're at a spot now. It's like we can do that. We've got a great team, and we, have enough scale to at least do that. But scale always helps. It always helps.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you said that because people think, oh my gosh, you scale to this massive number, like it's going to be easy. But like if you're, a 5% management fee on something, like, it's not that much, right? And to what you said, it's hard to hire help. You can hire help, but it may not necessarily be the help that you actually want.
Yeah,
and so I echo that. And that is just an important thing to note, that you think, when you scale, you're going to be getting all these, management fees and stuff. But a lot of times it's, you're putting into that, you're feeding that beast a lot. So I'm glad you said that and brought that up. And then you mentioned like district managers and things. So tell me a little bit about that. Do they, like, how many lots do they oversee, or how exactly does that work?
Yeah, well, and actually, I want to pick your brain as well on this because I've been having this conversation with other operators. So anyway, the way that we're organized, we have 8 districts, and our 2 district managers that have the most, they both have around 1,400 pads in their district. So it's a pretty large district. And that could be one state. So one of them's district manager for North Carolina, and we've got that many pads in that state. Or it could be 3 or 4 states. So they're all kind of geographically based. And then here's the part that I find interesting, and we're trying to figure out right now. the community manager position is a hard position. And you look at a lot of these communities and, to your point, it's like, well, if there's 70 spaces and, there's enough going on, like you need somebody that's helping out and paying attention, enforcing rules and regs and following up on people that haven't paid rent and all the rest. But is that a full-time position? Because doggone it, if it's not, and it's a part-time position, you're gonna struggle. Like that part-time person to be able to execute on what you're trying to execute on probably isn't going to work out too well. And so we've seen a revolving, and that could be because they can't pass a drug test. Because, what I mean? Just like the threshold there, like what we're talking about, we're not asking a whole lot. I mean, but kind of what we've discovered is even a full-time person that's making 40 or 45,000, like we struggled with the caliber and being able to trust that employee. And I'm speaking in big generalities. We had one of our district managers, after we'd lost 2 community managers for some level of incompetency or dishonesty, say, look, Sam, Steve, if you give me a chance here, I'll just manage these myself. Meaning she had another manager that she was working closely with. We'll look at the maintenance techs, and we're gonna see if we can do this better and for less money by doing it ourselves. And of course, we put a little incentive program in place, and we've now rolled that out in 3 of our districts. Basically, less people that are getting paid more, that have high integrity, high intention, and the early returns are good. It's not enough to have a warm body. I mean, we all know that to some degree, but we were working with these people, coaching these people, trying to make it work, and it just often wasn't sticking. And so that's the approach that we're trying right now. I'd be curious to get your feedback. But other operators I'm talking to are kind of experiencing something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've actually been running that model for the past year now. So for example, in the Tampa stuff, we probably got about 450 lots in Tampa. So we have one highly skilled, regional manager that runs that whole area. Now, I will tell you, Sam, what we've done a really good job at is buying these things in clusters. And so 70% of that portfolio, like you could run, I don't know, a 5K to it. Like it's right there. It almost operates as one community. But then we have 2 sort of clean, kind of a porter / maintenance tech kind of guy to help out with that stuff. And then our back office has been, they kind of take most of the calls and they're handling most of the calls. So we have one person that kind of handles the back end calls for the whole portfolio. And if it's important enough, they send it to the property manager. And so this is work. There's still some inefficiencies in that. But, in my opinion, because I screwed up in the beginning with trying to do it cheap, I was still working a full-time job. And when you hire cheap, you get cheap. And, we ended up, kind of getting screwed over in a couple of different ways because of that. And I think that's great for, new people and experienced people. Operating these things yourself isn't easy.
No. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, that was the misnomer when I got into the business is, I was reading and listening to everything I could. And the message that seemed to keep coming up is like, hey, these things, it's mailbox money. Like these things operate themselves. I mean, isn't that funny to think about? And it's like, that cannot be further from the truth. There's so many nuances to this business. And definitely when you get a park that everybody owns their own home and you're full and rules and regs are abided by, it is pretty easy at that point, but it takes a ton of work to get there. So anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, too, It's funny. Just another quick note. I think I got an email like a week ago. It said, it was kind of like not like a mobile home park broker, kind of a residential broker that was posting a mobile home park. And the whole pitch on the thing was mailbox money, mobile home park for sale. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. But I will say, so the very first park we bought, it's a small park, but it was really, really tough in the beginning. But I would say as the longer that they season, especially a value add park, it is easier. It is easier. There's still stuff. There's still stupid stuff that happens. Old infrastructure. Someone does something stupid. It happens still. But I will say the more that these things season, and if you're doing like proper background checks and you get the right people in there, that's a big deal, right? And it's it's easier if you get the right people. If you're just letting anybody in your park, like, yeah, it's great. You can fill it up fast, but you're just going to end up having to evict these people anyways, because they're not going to pay, or they're going to, Lord knows who, Lord knows what. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Yeah. That's, I mean, that we call it the J curve, but yeah, those first, again, depending on what kind of community you're talking about and what you bought, but often if it's a mom and pop seller, like they haven't screened people very well. And it depends, but often they're pretty lax on maybe the rules and the regs and who's in there. And so we're spending more time getting people out than we are getting people in for the first 6 to 12 months, typically. Until you can stabilize, like, hey, these are people that are going to be good citizens, care about the community, and now we can start bringing in the people we want. And the people that we really want, if there's drug problems or these other, violence or whatever, like they're not going to come and move into this community. Like you have to get it cleaned up in order to attract the people you want to attract.
Yeah, you do. And we were buying some pretty rough stuff in the beginning. I mean, the very first park we bought, I managed it myself. I wanted to, my insurance office was just like a few miles down the road. So I wanted to learn the business. And, I got thrown into the fire pretty fast and, learned a lot. Got threatened and all kinds of other crazy stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. Okay. So what do you guys like? What is your buy box? Like, what kind of deals are you guys looking for now? I think I heard you say on a podcast one time you were buying park owned home stuff. We were doing the same thing, but are you still looking for those kind of deals?
Yeah. Really, I suppose we're like anybody that we prefer not to own homes. But that's part of this business. I mean, even anytime you have vacancy, like you're going to have to buy homes, bring them in, set them, and turn around and sell them. And so we will. We'll buy park owned homes, and then we'll kind of go through a period of transitioning those and selling them off. Sometimes it goes quickly. Sometimes it takes a while. Yeah. I mean, quick anecdote for you. One of the markets we're in is Greenville, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good market. Like, I mean, you look at growth rates and population migration and kind of local employment and jobs. I mean, it's definitely a strong market. And we bought 2 different portfolios. I could best describe them as urban infill communities. So these are small communities. In fact, they make up probably 25 to 30 of the communities that we own are in Greenville, South Carolina, but we only have 300 pads, right? So we're talking, could be 5 pads, could be 30, but these are all, relatively small communities. Sometimes they're part of a residential street and you own one side of the street, something like that. And we struggled for a while finding good tenants or good residents. Again, we don't rent out homes, and just recently, and there's 2 different portfolios, but just recently on the more recently acquired portfolio, we were able to tap into the Hispanic community,
mm-hmm.
and basically it's one large extended family, and now it's two large extended families. And in the past 2 months, they've purchased over 25 homes. I just saw three more come through today. and these are all homes that honestly we were intending to probably pull them out and bring new ones in, because the amount of work you'd need to put in 1978 or whatever, and it's like, yeah, I probably just need to bring a new one in there. And that, but that's generally been our MO. I mean, that's kind of an extreme example. Usually it's more like, hey, these are 90s or 2000s homes. They're going to need some refurb. We're going to, make it show ready. And then somebody's going to come in and pay us $25,000 on a 7-year term or whatever to buy that home from us. But that's what we do. And we like that process of kind of turning those over and turning them into resident owned homes, and find it to be a pretty profitable way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's how we were buying this stuff too. It's harder to make sense of buying some of those communities now, because you're paying, what you're paying for them or what they're asking for these communities. And I'm like, the juice is not worth the squeeze to go in and do all the turnover, because it's not an easy process.
That's true.
And so I've battled with that a little bit in my particular buy box, because it's like, do I want to buy that park again? I don't know, because, there's some that we bought that we've still got issues with, old infrastructure and whatnot. Like, it's just, there's still stuff, but it is a very profitable way to run your business and to purchase these things, for sure. So I echo you on that. So you've got 6,600 pads now, right?
Yeah.
So like, looking at that now, Sam, I've got 6,600 pads now. Like, what have you learned now that, okay, hey, I wish I would have known this when I was starting? Like, what have you learned now, or what do you know now that you're like, man, I wish I would have knew that in the beginning and I wouldn't have done that?
Ooh, there's a lot of hard lessons, I'd say, we've learned. I mean, like I said, when I was getting in the business, what I could read and learn and find out about, and even talking to people, made it seem like it was relatively easy, like relatively hands off. And so I did the same thing as you. Like, the first community we bought was close to my house. I wanted to make sure I could dig in and figure it out. And so when I set it, after a couple of months, like, hey, we're all in here, it wasn't because it turned out that it was easy. Like, that became pretty clear right away. Maybe it isn't going to be that easy. But just that there were levers you could pull that you, at least from where I was coming from, you couldn't pull. So in other words, in single family home investing, you have if you're going to keep that and rent it out, like I mean, there's a very dynamic market that tells you, hey, this is what that home is going to rent for. And of course, we've seen market rents increase or whatever, and that'll help you or hurt you, depending which direction they go. But in the case of mobile home parks, it's like, all the time we were buying things and the rent was $200 and it should be $400. I mean, that wasn't just like an aberration. That was kind of typical. Like, what other real estate does that? What, industrial, office, like, when are the rents that when you buy it half of what they should be? I mean, it's just, that doesn't happen. But in exchange, like, there's these nuances that are difficult. And I think one of them is just underestimating how hard it is to grow occupancy. So and there's kind of two things we look at there. I was going to take the low hanging fruit first, try to fill up as many of these vacant park owned homes that you might have in the community, and kind of renovate those and go through those. And then bringing in new homes, it's like, oh my gosh, like, that's hard. And working with the factories and getting the financing set up and marketing these homes and selling them and showing them and getting a buyer approved. And right, I mean, you're nodding your head because it's like, man, that's a grind. And I think for sure we underestimated like how much work that was going to be and how difficult that was going to be. And I don't know that I'd do it any different if I was a bank, but when you're new in the business, they don't want to give you any money for new homes because they're like, well, how have you done in the past? I mean, they're looking for some experience and a track record in order to give you that financing, which is why when we're buying these communities and they're 60% occupied, that's why that mom and pop seller didn't fill it up because what are they going to do? Pay cash for those homes? It's like, well, they're living off that cash flow. So then, because they don't have those relationships and that track record to get the financing for the homes, it's difficult. In my mind, that's the hardest part of the business. And we could talk about some other things as well, but I feel like that's the hardest part of the business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's, we just moved in a home and into one of our parks in Tampa. And it's like, I'm just not that great at it yet. And it's difficult to do. And I laugh sometimes. I hear guys, I'll have some, kind of new guys in the business. Oh, okay, here, we've got 50 vacant lots here. I'll just get homes and bring them in. And I'm like, all right, like, I think you're misthinking some steps here because it's not that easy. It is not that easy to do. And even if we were, we're buying so this home we bought was a used home in relatively good condition. It's still, finding a good mover in Florida that you can trust. That it's difficult and it's a hard process. You almost need one body to handle that whole process and get really good at it because it's not easy, but it is a way that you can add value. And I mean, like when I'm looking at parks now, I don't assign much value to the vacant pads. I just don't going in. I mean, some people do, but it's not a skill that we've mastered yet. But how many homes have you guys moved in roughly?
I was just thinking about that as we were talking. So I think this quarter we're moving about 35 to 40 homes, brand new homes. We basically just buy brand new homes.
Yeah.
But we've had quarters where we've shipped, 60 or 70 homes. But that is a massive undertaking. So we have, one person on our team and they're responsible for making sure all homes are properly set, licensed, all this things that you need to go through to get those homes set up. Imagine if we were in the home building business, right? And we're like, how many homes are you building this quarter? And it's like 40. It's like, oh crap, like that's a lot. And of course we don't have to build that home, but you're building part of it. You're building the foundation, you're building the deck, you're putting skirting on it. You're probably building some of the infrastructure, at least cleaning it up and making it ready. And so it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it 100% is. And, I think I need to learn a little bit more from you on getting that skill honed in a little bit because I just don't feel like I'm that great at that skill yet. But, and so like, Sam, I wanted to ask you, so you've gotten to where you are now, like what advice would you give to someone that's new, they're looking to get in the business, they're making calls, like what would you tell that person?
Well, I think it would be similar to what your experience was and mine actually to a lesser degree, I think, than you, but is find something that you can easily drive to every day if you need to, that you can, and I would say just get hands-on with the property, make sure that what needs, learn for yourself, like go do it, learn for yourself. And then when you need to hire people to help you out as if you're planning to grow and buy more properties, that you know what they need to know. And you can identify the right people because you have an understanding of what's required. That'd be my thing. I think more than anything else, but don't be afraid of rolling up your sleeves on that first one and really, making it something where you can do the elbow grease and create value, because you want to get that first one right. I mean, I'm sure we've both seen it where, people do their first one and they want it to be easy or to be mailbox money or something like that. And then they overpay, and that's, as they say, that you make money on buying, right? So that's always been our philosophy. Let's make sure we're looking good from a basis perspective here. And then from there, we can make mistakes, because we will. We've learned from a lot of our mistakes, but I'm sure we'll continue to make other mistakes in the future. And this business can be very forgiving that way. But you don't make any fatal ones.
Yeah. No, that's very true. And it was probably a couple months ago, I got a message on Facebook from somebody. I'd talked to him before, but they basically bought a rough park. It was cheap. They undercapitalized it, and now they were had an issue, and they were looking like, hey, I need somebody to come in and help, and blah blah blah. But that goes to your point. They didn't buy it at a great basis. They undercapitalized the deal. And so what Sam is telling you, make sure your basis is solid, especially on your first one, because you have a room, but also don't be afraid to undercapitalize these things. Like if you're taking money from investors, the last thing you want to do is have to call and say, hey Sam, I need more of your money because I screwed up. Right. And so I can't stress enough, if you're buying an old value add park, you got to bring enough money to the table to fix all the stuff that you're inevitably going to run into, because mom and pop were, band-aiding everything for 50 years and stuff's bound to blow up.
And Derek, just to clarify, I thought I heard you say, don't be afraid to undercapitalize, but I think you meant to say, don't be afraid to overcapitalize.
Yes. Overcapitalize your deals.
Hey,
and
I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, 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 very important. Cool. Well, Sam, is there anything else that you want to leave our listeners with? Any, $1 billion wisdom you want to give us here?
I think it's going to be interesting, Derek, moving forward here, because I don't know what you're seeing, but there's definitely been some consolidation in the industry. But the consolidation at this point has kind of been mostly mom and pop sellers selling to groups like you and I. I think there's still opportunity out there. There's stones to be overturned. But I kind of feel like the next thing might be consolidation of actually groups like you and I into some sort of roll up or whatever. So we're starting to kind of think through some of that and think about that. But anyway, I love this business. So glad I found out about it. I enjoy not only the value creation, but I enjoy the community building. And so I feel like that's there's a whole bunch of things we haven't done great in the past, but I feel like one thing we've done well at is creating a culture within our company where people genuinely care about these communities. And so it's been cool to see, just this past summer, there's been a number of examples where community managers, without anybody saying, hey, you ought to do this, or I got an idea for you, why don't you try this, of their own volition have had these huge community events where one of them up in Louisville, Kentucky, they brought in 3 bounce houses and had popcorn and snow cone stands and all this stuff, organized it with a local church. And I mean, you the videos and the photos and the things that they've shared. It's man, that is so awesome. But it's, there's been a culture that's been created about let's make this a place that people can be proud to call home, not just housing of last resort. And so, the way I think about that is if we do that and we create a community that people want to live in, not have to live in, the rest of it takes care of itself. Because then it's easy to get more people to move in because they're getting recommended by their cousin or their aunt or whoever. And that's, you just get that organic growth. That's where we've had the most success, is when we can create a community where people want to live there. And then the organic growth that happens out of that has just been pretty awesome.
Yeah, and that's great. And look, for anybody looking to get into this business, like what Sam just said right there, like, yes, it's about business and, building your portfolio and things like that. But don't forget that, like, it is like, this is where people live, and making that particular, dwelling unit that they live in and the community that they live in, like, it needs to be a great place to live. And your community is better when you do those type of community events or any kind of other resident appreciation things that you can do. So that's super, super important. Well, Sam, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. It's been great. I know when we first met at MHI out in Vegas, and it's been great, man. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no, Derek, hey, I appreciate it. Glad to have the conversation with you, and look forward to seeing you soon at one of the shows.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for watching the MHP show. Please make sure you subscribe and leave me a nice little friendly comment if you wish on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. So we will see you next week on the MHP show. Peace.